And a good Monday to you. I'm Craig Melvin. We start with breaking news from Columbia, Missouri, where students declare this is not a moment, but a movement.
We shall overcome someday.
And just moments ago, word that the chancellor of the University of Missouri, R. Bowen Lofton, has announced that he will be stepping down at the end of the year. That comes just hours after the University of Missouri system president, Tim Wolf, resigned after weeks of pressure from students, faculty, and eventually lawmakers. They were upset over his lack of response to several racist incidents on campus. Among them, people hurling racial slurs without consequence, and someone using human feces to draw a swastika. Many in the college community claimed these were not just rare occasions of hate, but rather part of the culture there. A graduate student named Jonathan Butler decided he'd go on a hunger strike until Wolf stepped aside. Some started paying attention to the story then, but this weekend, when black football players at Missouri, an SEC school, said they would not play or practice again until Wolf went away, well, that's when it reached a tipping point. Mizzou's coach supported the planned strike. If the Tigers did not take the field this weekend against Brigham Young University, they would have had to pay a $1 million cancellation fee. Money talks. If the chess club or even the women's volleyball team had threatened to boycott, I'm not sure this is the Monday headline. But we're starting here tonight because in an age when many think hashtagging a cause counts as advocacy, college football players, the cogs in the engine that power many a university in America, realized their collective power to affect change. We start with MSNBC's Sarah Doloff in Columbia, Missouri. Sarah, we've got some new information, I understand, from campus in the last 10 minutes or so. What can you tell us?
Yeah, this story, Craig, continues to develop tonight. The university's chancellor announcing that he, too, will step down. Now, the university's president had done so immediately. The chancellor has a slightly different timetable. He will see his position out through till the end of the year, so till the end of 2015. Now, with this announcement, the university also announcing a series of changes, including the appointment of a chief diversity, inclusion, and equity officer, and they say a full review of school policies that concern students and faculties. Now, meanwhile, student activists continue to add to their list of growing demands. They say they want to see racial awareness and inclusion curriculum. They want to see an increase in black faculty, and they want to see a plan to retain marginalized students. Now, many of these activists describe today as a step in the right direction. They want to seize on this momentum to make real and lasting change here on campus. We spoke to several students about their reaction immediately following the president's announcement he was stepping down.
I think it's amazing. I think it's been a long time coming, and it's amazing to see all these people, faculty, students of every race, just here in solidarity with the movement.
It's a very exciting moment. Glad to see a change.
Honestly, I was really surprised to hear the announcement, but it's definitely a big step for the movement.
Now, the football team, or rather the coaches, just wrapped up a press conference in which they talked about their decision to hold this boycott. The coaches said they did so after several of their players came to them expressing fears about the health of that graduate student on a hunger strike. They do say, Craig, that practice will resume as normally scheduled tomorrow. Back to you.
We should also note that the hunger strike as well has ended. MSNBC's Sarah Doloff there for us in Missouri. Sarah, thank you. I want to bring in Lizz Brown, an attorney, a columnist for the St. Louis American. Also MSNBC contributor James Peterson of Lehigh University. Thank you both for being here. Lizz, good to see you again. I haven't seen you since I was on the ground there in Ferguson for a while. You just heard that list of demands from these students. The chancellor's gone, the president's gone there at the university. Realistically, what's the next step here, and how realistic is that list of demands?
Well, you know, the first step is really to reflect on how the university got to the place that it is. The fact that the university felt that it was appropriate to select a president of 4 campuses who had no experience in academia, who came from corporate America and had absolutely no experience in the issues that confront this university. How was that decision made? Why was that decision made? And we shouldn't make another decision like that. When you look back at this president at Wolf's Experience, he was a student in 1976 at Mizzou. And during that time in 1976, black students were creating entities because they did not feel comfortable on the campus of Mizzou back in 1976. It was only 2 decades before that black students were even allowed to attend. So you have a president who grew up, who was educated at a time in Mizzou that it was okay to do the things that are now happening in 2015. If you talk to any African American student at Mizzou, they all will tell you that it is understood at Mizzou that you do not go to Greektown at night. And the fact that students feel this way, and it's accurate that they feel that way, in 2015 speaks to the climate that has persisted at Mizzou since 1950. So the first step is a reflection upon the decision of why we chose this person and how do we do better.
James, we just mentioned those football players on the team who threatened to not take the field on Saturday, to not even practice again until the university president was gone. Washington Post writing, quote, "The team's protest threatens immediate economic damage to the university. This is perhaps the biggest issue at play." The football players put some major money on the line here. Does this potentially change the game for campus activism nationwide as a result?
Well, I think it does change the game in a couple different ways. One, to Liz Brown's point, it is very important for us to understand what's going on with universities choosing former software executives or folks from the corporate world to run academic institutions and what some of the pitfalls of that are. It also speaks to what you spoke to in the opening, Craig, about the value and the power of collective organizing here. Certainly, we want to praise the football, the student athletes that are there, but also all the other students and the faculty and the graduate students who all work together to apply pressure on the system. So it's a watershed moment in the sense that it once again proves the power of the people, the power of collective organization and strategic organization. But we have to ask the tough questions. And you'll notice, Craig, that the issue around faculty keeps coming up because when we look at these institutions with 2% black faculty, we have at least 8% of the student body being that way. And you think about the history that they're telling, Craig, about how this institution was founded prior to the abolition of slavery, how they didn't admit black students until 1950. That is the narrative, Craig, of institutions of higher learning across this nation. And so they are speaking to national issues that are relevant to the collegiate experience for people of color. And that's why it's such a powerful moment to see athletes, student athletes, come together and put pressure on the system in ways that we've known they've had power for a long time. I can only imagine, Craig, how other student athlete entities and organizations and ADs and coaches are looking at this particular situation. We have to acknowledge that the AD here and the coach here, as well as the president for stepping down, the leadership is understanding that the moment is now for them to make way for change and progress at Mizzou.
You mentioned the athletic director. He spoke a short time ago. This is just a snippet of what he had to say. Take a listen.
We do everything we can to teach them, to educate them. At the end of the day, we're teachers, we're educators, and we do everything we can to do that. We do everything to do that we can to make sure that they're leaders. And they decided to be leaders in this issue, to save a life of a fellow student athlete.
James, you mentioned it there. I mean, you've got to think that college presidents and coaches all over this country have to be watching what has transpired essentially over the last 48, 72 hours with a bit of a worried eye. I mean, what happens next time there's a college football team somewhere in this country that's upset over, how things are going on campus and they say, you know what, we're done. We're not playing anymore. We're not practicing anymore.
That's a critical question, and obviously it wasn't just the fine that Missouri would have to take. There's an entire machinery, you know this, Craig, around these games. There's entire small economies around these games each week that has to do with TV and merchandise and vending and tailgating. I mean, this is an economic challenge for institutions. But listen, it's not like student athletes are this is an incredible moment where the activism of Jonathan Butler transcended the particular moment, and they had to sort of step in here. So people will pay attention for sure.
Liz, I wanted to have you on because very few people know Missouri like you know Missouri. The New York Times wrote something that caught our attention. The campus was set on edge after Mr. Brown, an unarmed black teenager, was fatally shot during a scuffle with a police officer in Ferguson, about 110 miles from Columbia. About 8% of the undergraduates on campus were black in 2014, according to enrollment figures. A number of the black students come from Ferguson as we understand it. Liz, what we saw happen there, how much of that was shaped by what we saw in Ferguson?
Well, Craig, there actually is a Ferguson effect. What happened in Ferguson in 2014 inspired these students, inspired students all across the country to engage in activism. It demonstrated to them that they can make a difference, and quite frankly, that it has to be them that engage themselves fully into this moment. There is a Ferguson effect, and the Ferguson effect is one that inspires young people to engage in fearless activism.
Indeed.
Liz Brown, James Peterson, I enjoyed our conversation on this Monday. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.